Welcome to Soul Elevation, where you can guide your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and I'm so excited about today's guest, Endre Balogh. If you prefer to listen to this podcast rather than watch the video, you'll get plenty from our conversation, but when you get a moment, I highly recommend checking out the video later. In the video, Endre shows several of his art pieces, and they're very activating and worth you engaging with visually. We talk a lot in this episode about the energy we receive from visual media, and I loved hearing about Andre's process in creating these potent sacred geometries. Note his comment toward the end of the episode where he explains the grounded nature in which he receives the inspiration for this work. He doesn't consider his creation process mystical in the traditional sense, and I feel this is a great reminder for all of us about how spirit moves through us, even when we aren't consciously experiencing it in the mystical sense. Endre Balogh is an internationally renowned violinist who has performed with top orchestras, including the Berlin Philharmonic and Los Angeles Philharmonic, and collaborated with legends like Zubin Mehta and Vladimir Horowitz. A skilled chamber musician, he toured with the Pacific Trio for nearly 30 years and now performs French and Russian popular music with Paris Chanson. I probably butchered that, but hopefully you get the idea. Also an award-winning photographer and graphic artist, Andre's sacred geometry artworks, celebrated worldwide, are featured in the book Synergeometry. So you can dive into this episode in just a moment, but first I'm so excited to share about my book, Your Authentic Awakening, A Guide to Everyday Spiritual Living, which will be available this spring. And this book is designed to help you reach new heights of spiritual awakening. It's full of spiritual guidance, practical tools, and captivating personal stories, all working together to expand your consciousness and open your heart. Find out more on karagoodwin.com. And now, enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Endre. I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This is a delight to be with you and get to chat with you after we've sort of known each other on email, but first time in person. So this is true.
Yes. Yeah. And you're out west, and we've tried to connect, and you've been in the midst of all the chaos out there.
Yeah, the fires and everything. Yeah. And then we had problems because our power was out for several days when we were supposed to do our interview, but now everything seems to have fallen together. So we're in good shape.
Thank goodness. Well, you are just a fascinating person. For people who are watching the video rather than listening to the audio, you can see the beautiful image behind me, the sacred geometry behind me. You are the artist that created this beautiful work, and you have thousands of images, hundreds, thousands?
Well, I just made number 995, so I'm about 5 away from 1,000.
Oh my gosh, I was just a little bit ahead then, so yeah, very nearly 1,000.
On my website, there are over 1,000 because there's some of them are I couldn't decide how I liked a color or certain, so some of them are the same one in two different ways. So it actually goes over 1,000 on my website. But eventually, 5 more and I'll make it to 1,000.
Yeah. Well, you are also a very accomplished classical musician. So all of this, you've got this incredible background. I'd love to hear how tell us about your path, how you've gotten to where you've been, how sacred geometry has come into your life. How has your path led you to use your gifts in the way that you have?
Okay, so that's quite a lengthy conversation. I started. I always joke in my musical biography, which I've actually been the main part of my life. I've been a classical musician and playing concerts throughout the world as a violinist. I joke that I played concerts up until 2 weeks before I was born because my mom in the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and I actually have the program from the last concert she played before I was born, and so. And then when I was 11 days old, because my uncle was a violin maker, so they had a whole collection of violins, and they had a little 64th size violin, which is about that big. And so when I was 11 days old, I had my picture in the Los Angeles Times when my mom was putting this little tiny violin into my bassinet, and they were saying, "Here's a new violinist that's just been born." And so, of course, it's probably the only time the LA Times has been correct in prognosticating anything. So uh, that was they got it right there. And so I started actually. I won't go into the long part of the story. They didn't want me to be a musician initially, but I started demonstrating that I could. There was a natural gift there, and so when I started studying the violin when I was 3.5, and then I played 9 concerts in public when I was 4,
Oh my
and
gosh.
yeah, and then after that, the first time I played as a soloist with an orchestra, I was 6 years old, and then the first time I played with the LA Philharmonic as a soloist, I was 8, and then
Wow.
went on from there. I gave my New York debut recitals in New York Town Hall when I was 15,
Oh
and
my word, what a protege.
oh, that's what they said, and and
My
so then I
goodness.
was the soloist with the Berlin Philharmonic and the Rotterdam Symphony and the New York Philharmonic and the no, yeah, the New York Philharmonic, Washington Symphony, uh, Seattle, Los Angeles Philharmonic, all kinds of orchestras throughout my life, and then I also had a trio, classical piano trio, and we toured around the world for about 30 years and performing, classical trio trio literature and making some recordings and things, and then that has changed and through one reason or another, and then now actually what I do, I'm playing in a completely different genre, which is terrific fun for me. I play with a group that's called Paris Chanson, Paris Singing, Paris Chanson, and we travel all around the country. There are 7 of us, and there are 3 singers. One plays guitar, and then there's a drummer, bass player, keyboardist, and me. I sort of would be the equivalent of a lead guitar in the band, I guess, because I get to do a lot of the solos and I get to improvise all over the place. It's terrific, terrific fun. Something which most classical musicians don't like to do. But I love improvising, and so I've never had a chance to do that with Mozart sonatas and Beethoven sonatas. You can't do that. So now we travel all around the country doing shows, which is focused largely on or entirely on French and Russian popular music. So, like for those who would know it, Edith Piaf and Charles Aznavour and Enrico Macias, and of course contemporary people, Zaz, and so this is terrific fun. And we every place we go, our shows sell out, and so we do shows in New York and in Boston. We're going to go to Philadelphia for the first time in July, Chicago, Minneapolis. We go a lot to the place called the Dakota in Minneapolis. The city winery has now become one of our. So anybody who's got a city winery in their town who's watching this, you'll know that we'll come there eventually. I think we're Boston, Philadelphia in July, and then maybe the New York one. I'm not sure. So, but we do go to New York a lot. Play at a place called the Cutting Room, and then in Seattle, and of course we have a residency that we do. We call it a residency because we're there every month at Herb Alpert's place called Vibrato that's here in Los Angeles, and that's kind of the high-end jazz venue in town, and so we sell it out every time. As a matter of fact, next time we're going to be there, we have to do 2 shows, one from 7 to 8:30, and then another one from 9:30 to 11, which is kind of hard, but it's still fun but we'll sell them both out, and so people love our music, and it's enormous fun. And we were just in Florida. That's pretty much a brief summary of my musical career, and so.
That's amazing. So with that, when you were talking about you're kind of like the lead guitarist, but I presume are you doing the violin or are you actually doing the
I
guitar?
play the violin. No. I entirely play the violin. So I play a lot of melodic lines, intros to songs, and then I get to improvise in between. And
Okay.
so, but people can go on to YouTube and look up Paris Chanson, Paris, and then Chansons, Paris Chanson. And we have a YouTube channel, and we even have I think we have our own website, and that has lots of clips from shows. It's absolutely wonderful music. This is the music that largely existed in Eastern Europe, especially during the years of the Cold War. because the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, all of that stuff was Western music, was forbidden. What was the music of the time was Aznavour and Edith Piaf and Macias and these people. And so that was the music that those people in Eastern Europe grew up on. And so this is something that they don't get to hear very often anymore because nobody's doing it. All of those people have either died or retired. And then, of course, we have our own take on it because I'm improvising and I'm playing my own stuff as well. And so it's a unique experience.
Well, that's just beautiful. Amazing. So now you are also a photographer and so you're into the visual arts as well. Has that been consistent through your life like music, or was that something that developed later?
No. Because I really only started doing photography with any seriousness. I used to like to take pictures. A roll of film would have to go out and be developed, and you get back a bunch of bits, and then some of them would be good, some of them wouldn't be. All of our children we homeschooled, and one of the things that they did as homeschoolers was they were involved in a sport called horse vaulting. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's essentially gymnastics on horseback. And so the horse goes around in a circle, and there's someone in the middle. It has a lunge line, and the horse either is trotting or cantering. They have to learn how to jump onto the back of the horse gracefully and do certain maneuvers, and then they also have freestyle where they can do handstands and all kinds of things on the back of the moving horse. It's actually the oldest sport in the world because it evolved out of warfare, where people used horses to protect themselves, and they had to know how to get on and off a horse and do certain types of maneuvers. And so anyway, that's the long story of that. But digital photography, the digital cameras were just coming out at that time, and so I don't know if people remember way back when the digital first started, but there was a lag time when you push the button, and it would be a half a second or so before the shutter would actually fire or click, and so I had to learn how to take pictures of my kids a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah.
Because, well, now of course digital cameras are so much better. I took a photography 101 class with a great teacher named Jim Zuckerman, and he says, your photography is so much better than everybody else's in the class. You really do some artistic work. You should pursue this. And so then I took from him Photoshop 101 course as well. It's essentially it's learning just the basics of that, and that led me into being able to manipulate my own photos and make artworks out of them. So now, fast forward about 20 years, and I've been doing photography, and I just was the second year in a row I was the photographer of the year for the Channel Islands Professional Photography Association. Actually, I've been 4 times, but I missed 1 year. And then also in the California, I entered the California Professional Photographers Association contest every year. So this year I was the number 6 in among the top 10. In California, I've been as high as number 2 in various years. When COVID hit and everything, people were all locked up, so I started doing macro photography. So now I do a lot of very tiny things. I have all the rigs necessary to do very detailed photos of very tiny things. I can show you a little later. We're going through. I'll show you some things. One of them is a prize-winning photo that I did of a yellow jacket wasp, but you've never seen anything like that. So.
Wow.
These are macro photography shots. Often it's a process called focus stacking. So sometimes something that's very, very small will require hundreds of separate photos all stacked together and then assembled in a computer and to make the one shot be clear across its length. I've done book covers, of course, with my sacred geometry. So now I should get into my sacred geometry. So how did that start?
Let's start with what sacred geometry is, because it's not like a hugely well-known thing. And I know when you talk about book covers, Maureen St. Germain, you've done a book cover, and she's very tied with sacred geometry as well. So that's a beautiful.
I've done 4 of her book covers. So
yeah, that's perfect.
So that's how we met, because she was on your show, and I said, "Oh, gee whiz, we should."
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So let's first talk about what sacred geometry is. Can you explain, in case there's anybody listening who's not familiar?
Unlike regular artwork, mandalas, sacred geometry relies upon fairly fixed set of symbols, starting from the circle, and these have resonance to people's souls. We recognize these symbols because they're universal, and so that's what makes them sacred is because these are resonant images in terms of patterns. I believe, and I've been fairly confirmed that my sacred geometries and many others people's are essentially portals into the sacred realms. So if one meditates on a sacred geometry, that would be a lead at a portal to going into deeper levels of meditation, deeper levels of spiritual connection. A lot of people who meditate have told me afterwards that they say, "Oh, I encountered something very similar to that particular one that they happen to be seeing." Or when I was meditating, I was. So these are sort of links into the spiritual world, and through sacred geometry, and especially what I do specifically is that I like to combine a lot of different kinds of sacred geometric patterns. There's the Sri Yantra and the Metatron star, and I'm just going through a list, the seed of life and the tree of life, well, even the tree of life, these kinds of things. And I combine them often into one sacred geometry so that they have a resonant power that goes beyond just one single pattern, but they'll have resonances in a number of different ways. And so people meditate with them, especially with my sacred geometries, and they will become transformed into higher and higher realms of consciousness. There's a website that's called sacredgeometryart.com, and that aggregates together, I think, about 50 or 60 of the world's top sacred geometry artists who are working in making sacred geometry throughout the world. And I'm honored because my artwork is on their homepage, on their cover pages, as being the featured artist, because my sacred geometry seems to resonate so much with people. And so
that's beautiful. And I love how you talk about the layering of it, because in the quantum, or however you want to think of it, I have experienced like where it feels like other layers, almost like energy layers coming in, so it's not like, sometimes I feel what we might call downloads, right? That sometimes that's a new energy that's coming in. It has a new pattern that's coming in, and it integrates with the energetic patterns that we already have. Right. So I love that that's visually represented.
That's also that as my sacred geometries we're up to almost 1,000. I actually see them almost as a continuum in some ways, because they have evolved over time and become increasingly complex. And not only because I'm entertaining myself by doing that, but I believe I'm channeling them from another realm. I'm not particularly clairvoyant or a channeler or anything like that. But just to say how I got into making them in the first place, our precious son Antal passed away when he was just almost just a few days short of his 12th birthday, and that was a terribly traumatic event. But he started actually leaving us many messages. Someday I'm going to have to publish it. I have a book of about 250 pages of some very amazing messages that he left for us. He had almost a signature style for some of the messages. He would leave us little BBs, and these BBs would show up in the house years later on places that had just been scrubbed clean, and suddenly there would be a BB there.
My gosh, that gives me so many chills.
Yeah, so that's a whole separate conversation. But as sort of a self-therapy at that time, I started making these sacred geometries, and because they involve Photoshop, and I could sit in front of the computer and just sort of zone out. And I believe really that in the larger sense, we may have had a contract for this whole event to happen so that he could help to channel those to me from a higher realm. And so I'm sure that he still connects in that process. And I can't say that really that I meditate a whole lot when I start to make sacred geometry. Interested in my process is that I have a black square that's divided with a cross so that I know where the center is, and then I just start to play around. They evolve, and bit by bit they start to come together. Sometimes I start and I decide, oh, that doesn't work, and I throw it away. But most often they just continue to evolve, and then I go for a while, and then I say, well, now it's done. and then it is. And so that's how the process works.
Are you always working as one whole unit, or are you fractalizing as you create? Like here's one, 1/8 of it and then repeating it, or is it always the whole designed? Because there's
so often
symmetry, right?
no, well, often use something as a base of my to begin with. Like I have some brushes, for instance, that I use with Photoshop that are smoke. I will take like a smoke brush, for instance, and create one smoke, and then repeat that at an angle, rotating around the center. So then that creates a pattern. And then I will start to color that. I might duplicate it. I might flip it. The same pattern repeats outward. I can begin to show you some of these as we go, and you can see how that process happens. But they all are varied in so many ways. They're quite unique, if I do say so myself. They change. I also use a lot of Hebrew, because Hebrew is a sacred language, and the Hebrew lettering has sacred power to it. Not a lot of sayings in Hebrew, but it's just more Yud He Vav He, that sort of thing. And you can see some of that in my artwork, all of which has spiritual power. And that's really what I'm trying to capture in these sacred geometries, is as much energy as possible that is transmitted to those who view it. And people resonate to different ones.
What's interesting too with it is that, these are things like sacred geometry is something that, like you said, people can meditate on, like looking at the image and kind of use that as a portal to higher consciousness. It also, sacred geometry is so foundational to our reality, the structure of reality, that some people see it without having been knowingly exposed to sacred geometry in meditative state. So it's really interesting because you can use it to kind of invoke that higher consciousness, and it also can come in organically.
Right. Well, that's the idea. So many of these patterns exist in nature.
Yeah.
The Fibonacci spiral and all of that sort of, all of which I use in my work. And I've made sacred geometry starting with using some of there. You've seen galaxies that are maybe some on their side, and then there I'll rotate them around, and then that uses as the basis for some of my artwork. And so the stars, I have stars in my work, and the universe exists in microcosm and macrocosm in sacred geometry. And it's really a study of both the internal and external world, and combined together in one, as I said, and you said, portal that can bring people into a higher consciousness.
When I first started meditating many years ago, the first kind of visual that I ever had was a rotating galaxy. And I wasn't very, I didn't have any basis for why I would see that, because I didn't see visions. I didn't typically, that was an unusual experience. And then I'm like, of all things, why am I seeing a galaxy? Like, I wasn't at that time very interested in the stars or anything. But it is, like you say, that's a reflection of the Fibonacci sequence, and as above, so below. We see those in hurricane patterns, we see it in sunflower patterns, we see it across nature. It's in our anatomy, that ratio, the golden ratio. So it's really a fascinating subject if people are listening and they haven't dived into it. Would you like to share some of your work? Because you've got...
Yeah, I collected a bunch of them together, and I have some of my angels too. We'll get into those too as well. So this is actually not the very first one that I did, but it's kind of, I believe this to be sort of a foundational sacred geometry. It's simple in its nature, and we just spoke about so as above, so below. And so here's like the water of life and the cosmos, everything all centered into one glowing space, moving in toward the presence of the divine.
And that indigo is just brilliant as well.
Yeah. Well, colors also have a lot of resonance. Frequency. And so I use what would be sacred colors, purples and blues. Of course, all the colors of the spectrum are
beneficial in their way.
Have beneficial. And then again, that's why different people resonate to different kinds of energies. And these are some of the early ones. They're all in order that I've made them, so you'll see them as they go. This has a lot of Metatron stars, the Metatron star in the center, but then it also has a Star of David. There's also a flower of life in the background there. So this combines a number of different sacred geometrical patterns into one.
What's interesting is when you look at that, how you can perceive the three-dimensional aspect of it, because of course we're looking at 2D. And if anybody's just listening to the audio, I do encourage you to look at the video, because then you can see what we're talking about. But, here's another one that you just brought up, that if you kind of soften your gaze and you let yourself relax into it, you can actually kind of see parts of it pulling forward and get that more of a three-dimensional, because these are like living energies. They're not flat.
Right. This has three yantras and Metatron stars, and altogether it's a whole bunch of different energies here. This one, of course, I often like to use an eye, which is the all-seeing eye of wisdom or of the divine. This is probably one of my most purchased of sacred geometries. People love this one because it's got a lot of energy. And again, it has a flower of life and a Sri Yantra, and it's got also a Star of David in there. So,
and there's just a lot of movement in that. I mean, you talk about the energy, but really, this is another one. If you soften your gaze, like it is moving.
It moves. It jumps up. It jumps back and forth.
Yeah.
This is again using color, using light to have different energies.
Yeah. Now, for me, that one looked a little bit blurry, but was that just is that the style of it?
That was the style of it.
Okay.
Right. Again, that gives it, because the central part is not blurry if you look at it closely.
Right.
But the blur as the energy as it's moving forward. So these were all. I don't know why I chose to do it that way, but I did. So
yeah.
This is one of my personal favorites. I use this sort of as my own logo.
I love that. And talking about the playing with this with your eyes and the ability to kind of see it pull forward, or see if you can go deeper into it and see the center is like further away and you're going through a tunnel. Those are great exercises for people who want to work on developing their third eye sight. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I wish I could open my pineal gland or activate my pineal gland or strengthen my inner sight, working with your physical eyes, that's one of the tricks of the trade, is using different colors, using images like this where you're drawing it toward you with your eyes, drawing it toward you and going into the tunnel. Spending time doing exercises like that, like these would be amazing images to work on that.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, that's really what their purpose is.
Yeah, beautiful. You can see how they get more complex.
Yeah, this one really has a lot of movement to it. If you let your eyes sort of get lost, it'll start spinning.
Yeah, this would be another great one you could use for eye exercises, like using your eye to draw, like follow the circles, like the different circles in the different rotations. Great pieces for that. Beautiful.
This is one that I was started out with a galaxy. If you notice, you can see the stars that sort of rotate around it, and I started with a flat galaxy and evolved into that.
For me, that one looks like a top down, like you're above it, like looking down on something.
And this one really has a sort of a tunnel effect.
Yeah. I love it. Beautiful.
This one has a lot of sort of Fibonacci spirals.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, this one is, let's see, 501, number 501. So we're already sort of in the middle.
That's beautiful. So this one's very, Mandelbrot. It looks like a Mandelbrot sequence.
Sort of, yeah. Well, again, I have ways of manipulating each little figure and making it. Actually, what I did, I started with a large one and then created a sort of a curve. And then when I had that done, then I moved that around the circle center. And then so that's with the different colors. I think those are Metatron stars or something like that.
Wow.
It has kinds of power. There's a Metatron star in the center. So,
wow. Ooh.
This one This one, actually, the company that has my website where I sell all these, you can buy these in any number of different configurations, as far as prints, or they could be on mugs or shower curtains or what. And you can have a duvet cover. Our bed has this as its duvet cover. So
Oh,
imagine sleeping
wow.
on it.
Oh my gosh. Are you able to sleep?
Yeah, no, it's terrific. It's
It's like
just got
I'm
great
so
energy.
activated. I can't fall
Yeah.
asleep. There's
Uh,
like a Mother Mary quality to the center of that. Like it just feels as though there is like an open-armed kind of divine being in the center.
well, that's good for protection while you sleep, I guess.
Yeah, awesome.
So this is quite different because this is sort of more square, but then it also has a lot of different angles and patterns to it.
And in the very center of that, is that like is that geometry, or are those some
Yes.
symbols
Yeah.
or?
Yeah. Well, that's also, it's sort of a grid pattern of triangles, but the way they're set up, they go in on themselves.
Ooh,
This has a lot of spin.
yeah, beautiful. Ooh,
Here you can see what's called a tetragrammaton in the center. It's Yud He Vav He, the holy name of God. But then it's a very mystical symbol. This has been used by mystics from, gosh, going back hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I started using that a lot because I like it.
beautiful. Ooh, that
This one
one's.
looks like beads,
It looks like what?
like beads.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, I was thinking I get like the DNA. I see a lot of
Uh-huh.
like the DNA
Yeah.
genetic with that. Yeah.
But then there are also merkabas around the edges. You see,
Oh,
that's called.
yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
The purple.
So yeah, and there's a lot of, so I mean, there's a lot of energy from it, because if one realizes that each one of those merkabas has its own energy, you multiply it by having many of them. So
Wow.
this is using that same triangular as a base,
Oh,
but then there's
okay.
also a galaxy behind it.
Yes. Beautiful.
This one is sort of eye popping
Yeah.
and moves a lot.
Yes.
Now this one's entirely different. This is now,
Right.
these are, oh gosh, now offhand I forget the name of this triangular. There's a name for it. Each of the triangles gets smaller and smaller, but I use that as a basis anyway. I'm not concerned so much with their intrinsic meaning as with the spiritual meaning, and so I make them for their aesthetic beauty, but and also their spiritual power. But I'm not really focused on, oh, I'm going to use this one and combine it with that to make something specific. It's an evolutionary process. These are all sort of channeled.
That's beautiful. You've really captured the gold quality as well, like the reflective quality of the gold, and in this one too. Beautiful.
Yeah, so these are now already, this is number 8. So they've evolved a lot from the first ones.
Right. Gorgeous.
This has a Merkaba is the central.
Fantastic.
Now this one is entirely different. It's also, I like to use a lot. It's called the impossible triangle. So if you notice that it actually can't exist because it has no sides, or it's inside and out. It's hard to see
Yeah.
in this particular version, but
Very Escher.
the triangle has an outer side and an inner side, but both of them are the same. So
Yeah.
the way, yeah. And this also has a lot of power because that triangle repeats several times, and I've got all the Yud He Vav He, and it's just, yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on. There you can see that triangle better in the center here.
Yeah.
This one is very peaceful. So some of them are more energetic.
Yeah.
It's entirely different.
Oh, yes. It's like a lion's heart. It's got a lion quality to it. To me.
It's very strong,
Yeah.
but it's also, it's a heart.
Yeah.
So sometimes a few times I've used a heart as a central theme.
Ooh.
This becomes very complicated.
Yeah.
Triantras and Metatron stars, gosh, all kinds of things are in this one.
Yeah, the
There's a flame up at the top,
yeah,
tetrahedrons, right? Yeah.
tetrahedrons. Yeah. What did you say was at the top?
Well,
The
see if I
flame?
see that one. Flame up at the top. See that?
Yeah. Wow.
But actually, I have three letters. If you read from right to left, as would be Hebrew, the three letters at the top are Aleph, Mem, and Taf, and that spells Emet, which is truth.
Mm.
So you can see I really gotten complicated with them.
Yeah. We're just receiving so much energy just from gazing upon them.
This is no, this is almost the last one. I made one since then. This is 994, and it's actually this is started with a natural. It's a natural photograph of that looks like an eye, but it was a formation in the clouds that someone had taken a picture of.
Oh, really?
And that's what I used as the basis for it.
Because I was going to ask if that was meant to look like an eye, but it started as a cloud. Like a lenticular cloud? Is it the top half of the eye?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at what it was.
And then it looks very like, quantum web coming out of that too.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, the Yud Hey Vav Hey. Here I have the Emet going from right to left, and then going from top to bottom is Yud Hey Vav Hey. So that's particularly powerful.
Wow.
Now the next one is we're gonna start to see some of my angels. So now
good.
I know you talked about my angels.
Yeah, I've given a couple of these as gifts to people because they're just so powerful.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
There, I'll use some of the sacred geometry forms like this Merkaba symbol that's getting smaller and smaller down the center, and then I have that impossible triangle up at the top. And so that I'll incorporate sacred geometries into the angels as well.
And then tell us about these angels. And, do you feel that you are connecting with beings and then representing them? Or what is the impetus when you create them?
Well, first of all, I love angels and angels love me. And as angels love everybody. And so I just started making them because, again, it's part of the process because I just wanted to represent them. And now, actually, we've spoken about, you and I have spoken offline about my colleague Ness Carroll, who is a real channel, and she channels all kinds of amazing stuff. And she has there's 77 angels that she has channeled their particular energies to. And so I'm going to eventually try to make 77 of them.
Wow.
And because she attaches these sacred qualities to each one. What I've done is the face of the angel remains in the same position throughout.
Oh, interesting.
And the angels change as we go.
That's gorgeous.
So it's always going to be the same face of the same angel, and if we were to line them up back to back, they would morph from one to the other. I've done that.
Wow.
I think there's a YouTube video of someone having done that.
So do you ascribe particular angels to different pieces of work?
I'm a mystic only in the sense that I'm mystical. I'm not. I wish I would have more mystical experience than I do. My mysticism is, I know that it's true, but I don't spend any time meditating other than the time that I'm making these. That's my meditation. Mm-hmm. It's very odd, I think, in some respects, because people really pursue deep spiritual experiences, but my experience is to create these. It would be nice if I would leave my body and go out into other realms or something. It would be great fun, but I don't think I'm not sure that that's my path in this particular incarnation. So,
well, I feel too that for some people, they have more of a conscious awareness of like, oh, I experienced my consciousness connecting with this angel or whatever. And for other people, it comes through and it feels like imagination, or it feels like they're driving it more, but there's actually a lot more going on behind the scenes.
That's what I said earlier, is that different people resonate to different things. And here, I have galaxy down at the bottom, and the way the light is. This is a whole. I want to create these light beings. That's really what they are. They're beings, and they have different energies because different angels have different energies.
Hmm. I love that
Yeah,
they
and
have the sacred geometry represented in them as well. You kind of get so much
yeah,
with them, with each one.
right. Yeah, those are the signatures of that particular angel.
Mm.
Now, I don't know what it is, but the angel does. So
Beautiful.
yeah, the different colors and the different kinds of power that exists in each one, and they're all going to be different,
Yeah.
and so everybody's going to resonate differently to them. So
Beautiful. Yeah.
oh, okay. So now we've gone past the angels. Now I'm just going to show, if you don't mind, a few of
Yeah.
my just regular photographic artworks. We were talking about sunflowers earlier, and so this is
Oh,
a
yeah.
vase of sun. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in on these because they're not of the way I'm displaying them. But these are called light paintings, and they achieve an amazing kind of light. It's a complicated process. It's all done in the dark and with flashlights and stuff. And I assemble it all later. But
I was going to say
uh,
this looks like a painting, not a photo. So,
yeah, well,
yeah.
these are that's why they're called light paintings,
Yeah.
because they are. It's a very complicated. It sometimes will take me several days to put one together.
Wow.
But here we have the sunflower, and if you were to zoom in, you would see the sacred geometry inherent in the sunflower's pattern in, in the center of each one. So this, well, being a violinist, I did a light painting of my violin,
Wow.
and
That's
a book that it's
beautiful.
shown in. Again, this is done as a light painting. So
Yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, it's hard to believe that that's a photo.
yeah, the detail and yet the quality of light is the detail is that of a photo, and the quality of light is of a painting. So
Yes.
combines the best of both worlds. Okay, now here's my
The yellow
focus stat
jacket.
photo, the yellow
Wow.
jacket.
That's incredible.
Now that was 77 separate photos.
Really.
Yeah,
Wow. That's the second
so
time
that you can get that.
77 has come up too.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's fantastic.
yeah. So this won a number of awards.
I can imagine. Wow. Oh, wow.
This is the hibiscus flower.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, I have lots and lots of flowers. I've had books published with my flowers photos. I have a number of books that are available for sale, and then this is also just my regular photography, taking a picture of
A
a
goose running on water.
Canada goose.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
taking off. Yeah, well, that's all the ones that I've collected.
Wow, thank you
I've
for sharing. Those are just remarkable. You're so
have my stuff.
talented.
Oh, thank you.
Well, and so you have a collective project as well called Center Geometry. So
Yes,
talk
in
about
geography
that.
with Ness. Hopefully, you will have a chance to interview her at some point, because she'll be an amazing person for you to talk to.
Yeah.
We did a book together that's called Synergeometry. I can show it here. It's available.
Oh, wow,
There.
look at that.
Yeah. My dear friend and collaborator, Ness Carroll, is a amazing channel, and she has spirit downloads to her little poems that go with each of the
Oh,
sacred geometries that are in this book. And each I've seen her do it. It's fascinating, because what she'll do, I will show her a new one. So she'll have a piece of paper and a pencil, and she looks at it for like 10 seconds, and then immediately they download it for her, and she gets it in a minute. And so
wow.
these beautiful little poetic statements that go with the sacred geometries. So this book is available on Amazon for if anybody wants to go and see it and buy it. And,
Wow, and then you get the artwork. Well, you
get the
get a ton of
artwork, and then
artwork and you get the downloaded message
you
and
get these meditative poems. Like, well, so here we're talking about portals. So this one, I'll read you this one so that you have an idea. It says, "Portals, splendor, planets, peace, graceful, generous life of ease. Watch all negativity cease as you appreciate the greater release."
mm,
So that gives it a window into how one might meditate on that particular sacred geometry. So this is about, I think it's 130 separate different ones
Wow,
in here.
that's gorgeous.
Sacred geometry, yeah.
Now, does Ness have any insights into where you're getting the inspiration from in terms of, are there star
Well,
systems or ascended masters or?
spirit,
Okay.
spirit. Just, that all which encompasses all of the above,
Yeah.
right?
But does she ever
So,
look at particular ones and comment like, "Oh, the Pleiadians are, coming to
oh,
me now,"
I don't.
or
I'm not sure. I think she's just is such a pure channel. What they download to her is that
they don't have those
pure.
individual characteristics?
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so that's one of the books that I've done, and then also I did a book with a wonderful person, Endre Balogh, that's called The Not So Little Book of Surprises.
Oh,
Um, That's also her spiritual teachings, because she does a lot of seminars and teachings, and then poems and things that have been taken from her. And every page is illustrated with photographs of mine. You can see one of my sacred geometries that we saw earlier,
wow.
but it's all put together. This is also available on Amazon. It's a fantastic book.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's called the Not So Little Book of Surprises. Her husband is Will Arnst. So this is by Deidre Hain and William Arnst. And a lot of people who listen to you will know that Will Arnst was the producer director of a very famous documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know?
Oh, right.
And I'm sure a lot of people remember that. So he is. It even says so on the cover here. He's from the creator of What the Bleep Do We Know?
Oh,
So,
wow.
and, I think they get a lot out of it because it's full of my artwork and full of Deidre's wisdom. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I love this. Thank you so much for sharing, because just to reinforce, for people who are listening to this are wanting to strengthen their connection to the divine, to source, to their own soul. And these are like, they're pathways that maybe we think that we've got to, really work our way through it, do our meditations, do our breath work. And yes, there are things like that are going to really help us along our path. But then there are these things that we can also utilize, that we can gaze upon these images that create or that contain this resonant energy, and it affects us just by the
right.
gazing at it. So,
Well, beauty. A famous person that I a very, very well-known rabbi that I know said that the four aspects of God or the divine are love, justice, truth, and beauty. And so I try to incorporate all of that. Beauty comes from order and harmony, and which are musical terms too. And so that's what's in the sacred geometries that I make is I want to have color harmony. I want to have order, and then that reflects upon truth, and then the outpouring of that comes from love. And so love, justice, truth, and beauty all combine together into these images. And so that's really what I'm working with at a higher level, is to try to bring those aspects into something that people can then relate to in their own way. And that's why I have 1,000 of them already, because everybody's going to relate to something differently at their own level.
yeah.
And so I would encourage people to go to my website and take a look at all of them, where I have all my other artwork as well.
Please tell people how they can find it.
Endre's Art. It's Endre is ENDRE. So it's Endre's Art, ENDRESART.com. It's very easy to remember, endresart.com. And there's a whole gallery there for sacred geometry. For anybody who wants to go to my website and purchase one of these, for like you have behind you there, they have a discount code. I made a discount code that's good all the way through till the end of this year.
Oh, wonderful.
End of 2025. So anybody watching this between now and December 31st of 2025, if you put in the following letters, I don't create this, so don't blame me, but it's the letter U, like umbrella, Z like zebra, L like lion, P like popcorn, N like Nancy, and again U like umbrella. That's not the right set of designations, but anyway, UZLPNU, you'll get 10% off on anything that you purchase from my website.
Fantastic.
So I
Are
do
those
the special
lowercase letters?
I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay.
They have it's just those 1, 2, 3, 6 letters. Yeah, UZLPNU,
Okay.
and that will get 10% off on anything, any configuration you could buy as a duvet cover to sleep under, or shower curtain, or
Oh,
on a mug
fantastic.
or whatever. So
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Thank you for offering that. Well, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave with listeners as we wrap up here?
I just it's such a joy to be able to speak with you, and to be able to share my artwork with you and your listeners. And I look forward to sometime coming back and getting to talk more about these wonderful things.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This has been fascinating. And just like how all of your art holds so much energy, I feel like we packed a lot into this short amount of time. So there's a lot in here, even though it went so fast. So thank you so much.
So we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Soul Elevation. Please take a moment to think about someone in your life who might be uplifted or have their curiosity sparked by this content, and send it on to them. Let's keep sharing high-frequency, empowering content to reinforce the highest potential for humanity. I also invite you to subscribe to this content. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.